Yeah, welcome to the second panel. Welcome to the second panel of the day. The theme is Deciphering the Digital DNA, and it's about lessons to be learned from media startups in the US, like BuzzFeed, Now This News, and Circa, and many more. These startups in the US have been almost as much in the news as they produce news, or so it seems. But what exactly makes the approach to telling the news so interesting? Why do journalists and media managers rush into Silicon Valley to be inspired by their disruptors? We invited our guest from Seattle, a freelance journalist who reports with a transatlantic view about digital innovations in media and marketing branches. Please welcome Ms. Ulrike Langer.
Hello, everyone. Quite delighted to be here again for the second time. I was asked to speak in English, but I can assure you, although I live in Seattle now, I can actually also speak German quite well. So, how does this work? Okay. Deciphering the digital DNA. Before we can talk about solutions, I thought I'd briefly show you what the problem is. The problem is this. This is a photo I took in Seattle where the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, it was a newspaper, folded about 5 years ago. It's now purely digital. It's just a website. It's a shadow of its former self. It produces very shallow journalism. What many people think is because of the web produces bad journalism. That's actually not true. Never believe that. I'm going to show you many examples of how that is not true. The problem is that legacy media, traditional media often think that they have their good journalism in print and the web is for the shallow journalism because people don't want to pay, they want to have just free little pieces of news. And this is why the Seattle Post-Intelligencer now lives on the junkyard and has been selling their boxes where you can buy a newspaper. One of these is now mine. It makes a great mailbox, but of course that is a sorry sight for journalism. So what else is a big problem? A big problem is this famous question, if you could only take one thing onto a island, what would that be? Well, for nobody, it seems, it would be a printed newspaper. For older people, they'd rather take their TV set. Younger people would take their mobile phone. They can live without, everyone can live without newspapers, but younger people cannot live without their mobile phone. And another big problem is that media need to figure out how to deliver news on the web and how to deliver especially news on the mobile, because on the mobile phone, because web is slowly moving to mobile and more. Most people realize they never actually needed a PC. That was just an interim stage. All they really want is to have the internet with them all the time. So media need to figure out how to be not on the web, as Emily Bell, director of the Columbia Journalism School, the digital department once said. She coined this beautiful phrase, media need to figure out to be of the web, not on the web. And this is something that startups seem to intuitively know. They do not have an old business model to protect. They can disrupt without destroying themselves because they haven't been there before. There's nothing to destroy. They can start from the scratch. So if people are not reading newspapers, where is everyone? And especially where's everyone under 30? Hint, they're not using newspapers. Mobile usage is on the rise. These are US stats, recent stats. And then if you consider, so people are using mobile, what are they doing there? They're using apps. They are spending 2 hours and 42 minutes daily with smartphones and tablets. The younger they are, the more smartphones, the older people are, the more tablets they use. and they are mostly using apps. So startups have somehow found a better way to get onto these apps and to produce apps that people actually want to use. Because you absolutely need to have a place on the home screen. The average user downloads many apps, but then actually only uses 6 or 7 regularly. The rest gets downloaded and never used or just forgotten after some time. So you need to, if you are, whether you're a startup or whether you're a traditional media company, you need to be on an app on the home screen. And I don't know if you can actually see this well, but I've highlighted this in red. News apps make up 2% of usage time. Most of the time is spent with games or with utility apps that actually serve a purpose. So apps need to provide a value, but what is value? It's not to us journalists anymore to decide, or for a media company to decide, because people who own phones, people who sit in front of a computer and decide which web page they want to browse to next, which app they want to open next, they are absolutely in charge. It's for them to decide. So we need to be more humble as journalists and figure out how can we actually be of use to the people. And this is what this is a collage of some startups, which I'm going to introduce in more depth in a second. They have figured this out. They do not want to serve the news in a way that everything that was in our printed paper or everything that we've ever put onto the web or everything we've had as traditional radio and now put onto an app, they don't think like that. They absolutely think like, what can I be of use for whom, where, and at which moment? And if you think like that, you come up with totally different solutions that do not look like any traditional media look like. For example, Circa. Circa is a news app that has completely destroyed the notion that every news segment must consist of an article, that the article is the base of everything. Circa produces either very short snaps, so say, for example, Ebola. If you already know a lot about Ebola, you probably only want to receive the latest news. And you only want to receive what you don't know already. And then it can be very annoying to read a news story about Ebola by a classic media company. Spiegel Online does this, Focus Online does this even more. So you start reading the article, and after 2 graphs or so, you notice, wait a moment, I've already read this before. It's just the same article. They've only just added a graph on the top, and then that's just the same. So Circa doesn't do this. So the app knows exactly where you have left off, and you can even change the device. You can, if you have started a story in the subway, and then you're home, you put your smartphone away, and you have left off at a certain point, the app knows where and immediately shows you what you don't know, because the algorithm knows that. And also, if you do not know a lot about Ebola, you probably want to know some in-depth information, some basic information, some Wikipedia-style information, so you can better understand what is new. And Circa delivers that too. And you do not have to subscribe to the app. The app is free. You do not have to subscribe to certain sections. You can subscribe to individual topics. You can tell the app, I want to know everything about Ebola. And in fact, I'm very interested in world news or health news. So give me those health news, and I can click on a topic. I can stop subscribing to it, and I can tell the app, do not ever show me any sports news. I'm not interested in those. So that is a very user-centric way of delivering the news. Give me exactly that, what I'm interested in. Now this is another way of delivering the news, and that is catering especially to very young people, the YouTube generation. My children, who are 15 and 12 years old, they love now this. It's snackable video content, but it's very intelligently done. Now this actually employs some of the best journalists of the industry, and it was developed by a venture capital fund. Those are the guys of whom everyone says they fund e-commerce, they're not interested in journalism. They actually are interested in funding journalism if it's done in a way that they think has a future, which of course means in the long run for them to make money. So now this is short video news. It's highly targeted towards the mobile the mobile audience. In fact, it's only targeted towards the mobile audience, and it's just visually, it's a joy to use video news like that. Another example is Vox. Vox actually stands for a form of journalism, another form of in-depth journalism. It's called explainer journalism. So again, it's not the medium-length article which is in the focus of Vox. They have in-depth news about subjects, and you, as the user, you can decide how much additional information do I want about this. And they've come up with this card system, like a stack of cards. You can flip through them in a digital manner, especially on the mobile phone. You can flip through them and quickly cover the background of a story which you want to know more about. So away from the serious news to the fun. This is not journalism in a traditional sense at all. This is completely different. The founder of Pop is actually a designer, philosopher. He's an American. He's lived in Berlin for a while, and there he invented a travel guide that looks like one of these booklets that painters use, which when they go to people's homes and try and show them which colors they might like for the walls, they show them this booklet, and they can choose different colors, and it folds out. You can fold it back in, and that's what he came up with for a travel guide. So he thinks completely out of the box. And then he came up with this. It's a way of communicating via animated GIFs. And actually, in preparing for the speech, I made sure you can say GIFs or GIFs. It's both correct. So by communicating in animated GIFs, what do I mean by that? Someone sends you a GIF just like you would forward a photo on Facebook, and then you can answer with a GIF. You take their GIF and introduce an element into this. So it gets changed, and you can send it back and forth, and it's fun to use. And even grown-up editors-in-chief love this tool. I was on a tour guiding German editors-in-chief through Silicon Valley in March, and we visited Ziga, which is the company behind Pop. And first they said, you could see it on their faces. They thought this was just a waste of their time, and then they downloaded it on their phones, and oh, this is so much fun. So again, there was this aha moment that you can actually communicate and tell stories in a completely different way. So this is one way of thinking news and media and journalism differently. And then, of course, there's also a way of devising niche apps just for a single purpose, because this is still all general news, and the user decides this segment of the news I want. But of course, there are also media apps which from the beginning are just for one single purpose. And if you think of a smartphone as a Swiss Army knife, what is it like? It's you want the best tools. You do not want 50 mediocre knives and corkscrews and whatever on there. Rather some less, but you want the best of what there is, and that makes a Swiss Army knife. So some of these tools, which are like Swiss Army knife blades, for example, Go Everywhere. It's an app that delivers local news to me. And it lets me decide which areas I define as local. This is something that traditional media companies don't do. They usually define for me what is local, and usually they say the address they have from me because I'm their subscriber, or somehow I signed up, maybe on a web page I signed up somewhere, and this is the address that they think that's local to me. That's true if I stay at home all the time, but the more urban and the younger and the more mobile I am, this is not true. I might live in a place A, I might work in place B, maybe city B. I might have children which I need to pick up from school, and then that's place C, and I might be interested in news from all these places. So it's up to me to decide what is local for me. And this app lets me very intuitively just draw a line. This red area, just draw a line with my index finger on the touch screen, and that's local. And I can draw as many circles as I want. Another app that makes intuitive and innovative use of the concept of local, this is actually a British app. It's called Near You Now. It's still in beta stage, and it's in conjunction with the University of Sussex in southern England. Near You Now sees where I am right now and draws a certain, like a cloud, decides that this is local for me because I'm there right now. And if I move to a different place, my local cloud of information moves with me. So local is always where I am. It's still in public beta, and more and more newspapers are getting interested in it. But so far, there are just very few which have already signed up. But I think this will change because this is a very innovative way of thinking local. Of course, mobile also means new reporting tools, and one of the most famous reporters who makes use of this is Tim Pool. He was independent, and now he works for Vice magazine. He reports everything that's around him. He has a camera always with him, and he reports from a first-person perspective all day long. Of course, not when he sleeps, but all day long, wherever he goes. He mingles with the crowds. He reports from crisis areas, from demonstration areas, and he does this so well that Vice magazine now has him on staff to report like this, but also already think beyond what he's doing now and devising even more radical ways of live casting. Okay, I've talked a lot about mobile, but what are other trends beyond mobile? You might know this. These yellow stickers, what the fuck and lol and many more, they stand for BuzzFeed. And BuzzFeed has a mobile app. That's all very well, and but we're not going to talk anymore about mobile. We're going to talk about what does BuzzFeed do beyond that. So BuzzFeed is known for its listicles and its lolcats, and it's not taken very seriously in Germany. Actually, many journalists hate BuzzFeed. I think that's a wrong attitude, and that means seriously underestimating BuzzFeed, because BuzzFeed actually has found a way of financing news. They are profitable. They do not have a single banner ad on their page or on their mobile site or anywhere. They produce native advertising, which in Germany also has a very bad rap, which I think is, again, a wrong way of looking at it, because native advertising done well does not mean fooling the user. It does not mean tricking you into believing this is editorial content when in fact it's advertorial content. It just means that advertorial content is actually done as well as editorial content. It's just as useful, as funny, as interesting. And BuzzFeed has a team of more than 60 people now. They are not the journalists, it's completely separate. They work with advertisers to produce content that people actually like, other than banner ads, especially mobile ads, which people are just annoyed with. They get in the way. They're never useful, just annoying, so you want to get rid of them as quickly as possible. And BuzzFeed produces advertorial content that people like so much that they actually want to share it. So BuzzFeed doesn't even worry about people, if enough people come on their homepage. They don't care, because the advertorial content gets shared, and that's how they make their money. So, but they are not only about listicles and lolcats and native advertising. They also actually produce some pretty good journalism. And one of my favorite stories, one of the best stories I read in all of 2014 so far, is this story about a young guy. He's not even a journalist. He just came out of college. He moved back to Detroit, where he originally came from, and he bought a house for $500. He started renovating it, and later he told this story, a very, very long story. It took me 45 minutes to read it in depth. And actually, most people, this story has 1.6 million people have read it so far. Most users have read it on their phone, and most users have read it to the very end on their phone, on that small screen. So this story is about himself, how he renovated this house, but also in a bigger picture, how Detroit is slowly deforming from a depressed city with a dying automobile industry. It's coming back, it's having a revival, and it's a beautiful story. You can just recommend it to anyone. And it's just one of the examples of in-depth reporting, investigative reporting that BuzzFeed is doing now. They're making money and they're investing it into journalism. And this never gets talked about in Germany. They have an editor-in-chief. He comes from Politico, which is a renowned politics website, and they're hiring. They have 600 people worldwide, and they're hiring more than 100 news staffers right now, and more than half of those are journalists. So newspapers and are laying off journalists, and journalistic startups are actually hiring. So, and even people who are not journalists who have just been laid off, some people are very keen on working with BuzzFeed, because it's actually exciting to work there and invent the future of news. Another important trend is map-based, data-driven, non-linear reporting. What is meant by that? It means that you do not present stories as a starting point, but you actually give them a map, or you give your users, you give them a database, and you let them discover the story they want, they're most interested in for themselves. And there are different ways to do that. One of those ways is Homicide Watch DC. It now exists in several other American cities too. And they have this claim, which is too small in writing, so I've actually blown it up because it's important. Mark every death, remember every victim, follow every case. Homicide, so murder, is so rampant in DC, it's one of the murder capitals of the US, that media do not even report on every murder anymore. There are just too many. And of course, this is sad for those people involved, especially sad for the families of the victims, but also for the families of and friends of the perpetrator, because their lives are changing too, and they're interested in every minute detail of this one murder that didn't get reported on. And Homicide Watch and the founders, Laura and Chris Amico, a married couple, they decided this is not right. We're going to do something about it, but we need to present the news in a different way if we want to make every death count. So they put up a database and a map, and there's a little search box in the middle of this blue box, so you can search for names of victims right there, or for places where, or areas, or you can have the map as entry point and just click on one of those red little markers, and they will also take you to the story and to the information that's there. Unfortunately, Laura Amico, well, not unfortunately for her, but she went on to a fellowship with the Nieman Journalism Lab, and now she's on staff with the Boston Globe. And nobody is now continuing Homicide Watch, so it's actually right now it's getting old on the web. There will be no more new information. It's thriving in other cities, but in DC, the local media kind of were tentatively interested in, but then just said, no, we don't want this. So that's actually sad. This can also happen to startups. Another very famous, renowned institution is ProPublica, of course. This is a startup that is not financed on the capital market, with venture capital. It's actually financed by the Sandler family mainly. These are philanthropists. They finance journalism. And ProPublica concentrates on subjects that are underreported and which are important for society, that something would be missing if nobody reports these aspects. One of their most famous stories is Dollars for Docs. That's a very catchy phrase for a huge problem in the US. There was this scandal that doctors took money from the pharma industry and didn't disclose it. The scandal wasn't that they actually took the money, they're allowed to do this, but they must make this transparent. They must make the public, let the public know how much they got from whom for what. But they didn't, many of them didn't. And then, of course, the traditional way of reporting on such a story would be to choose a rural example and an urban example, one from the West Coast, one from the East Coast, one from right in the middle, and then write a story about it. That's all very interesting, and ProPublica did that too, but that wasn't the only way of reporting it. That's only to make people interested in why should this story be interesting for me. But what happens next? People, of course, want to know, okay, I'm not interested in this example from Chicago because I actually live in somewhere in Alabama. What about my doctor there? What about the doctor of my kids? Did he also take money? And this prescription, which I'm taking right now for a heart condition or for whatever, am I taking this because in this moment this is really the best for me? Was that the doctor's intention, or did he prescribe that because he's getting money from a pharma company to give me that prescription? That's what people want to know. So there's a database. Again, there's this little blue box. And you can put in any name of any doctor, and this database will tell you if this doctor took money or not. So that is public service journalism. You have a story for the general outline of why is this a problem in the nation, and then you can break it down, why is this personally relevant for me? And with big data, with huge sets of data, this is actually the only way to do this, because you cannot list all the doctors in stories. Another way of telling news in depth is to think completely different, not seeing yourself as a media institution of record, which has to report everything which editors and reporters think this is important for a certain area in one day. It used to be everything that fit into the newspaper section. And on the web, of course, there are not any space restrictions, but there are still time restrictions and manpower restrictions. Narratively does not care about that. This is a site, it started in New York, and its founder, Noah Rosenberg, thought, okay, there are many local media who try to cover everything that has happened in a certain day or in a certain week. What if we just concentrate on one local aspect? For example, what is it like for a blind person to live in New York City? Or let's concentrate on cyclists for this week. But then we will tell the stories about cyclists in New York from every possible angle, and we will tell it with every means we have, in pictures, in video, in slideshows, in audio slideshows, in long written essays, in interviews, whatever we can come up with. A whole week, just cyclists. And then next week we move on to something else. And this way we can tell stories really in depth. So it started with New York, and there are now, I'm not quite sure, it's 30 or 40 cities worldwide where this concept has actually caught on. So Narratively is now a network of local, in-depth stories told. And then local can again be thought completely different. You might have heard of this term hyperlocal. It's called, hyperlocal is actually smaller than local, so more local than local. And this was a term that was coined several years ago, and people thought, okay, it's not working, hyperlocal, there's no way to make hyperlocal sustainable. A lot of big companies got into it, but it's not a hype, it's quite alive. And it's local, and it's not working for huge corporations like AOL who try to invest in this. It does work for people who actually live in a community and report well on this. And so it's a hyperlocal is actually the model for startups. Most local journalists who don't have a job anymore, they still are very knowledgeable about the local beat they reported on. And some of them now are starting startups and say, if our local newspaper thinks it cannot finance journalism in this area anymore, maybe we journalists can still do this. And one of the most famous hyperlocal blogs is right where I live, the West Seattle blog. It has this really not very attractive WordPress theme, and which hasn't changed in years, but it just concentrates on local journalism. No story is too unimportant if it happens in West Seattle, and it can't be important if it's not happening in West Seattle. And this is true for the stories reported on and actually for the ads. It's financed solely for this also not very attractive banner ads. But this works. I call this a win-win-win situation. The people in West Seattle, we're about 80,000, we know that the West Seattle blogs reports for us on everything that matters to us on our peninsula. And these advertisers, they buy these stamps of honor. They're not normal ads. It doesn't matter if anyone clicks on them. People just check if there's a stamp of approval on the blog, which means these local businesses, they finance the West Seattle blog. So people actually go to these businesses and do business there. So a local car shop or car parts or a local bakery, they get frequented more if they support the blog. And so this is a model that works on a very small scale. If if the journalists who run the blog actually are part of the community. It does not work as a cookie cutter model, which big corporations tried to do. So it does not scale. And as last examples, I want to show you something completely different, because a startup founded by journalism can actually also mean not producing content at all. It can also mean providing a platform so that other journalists can work better. One of those is Story Hunter. Story Hunter was founded by Jaron Jelinski, who thought there must be a better way of getting freelance video journalists. That's what he was. He worked for Current TV, he worked for the New York Times, and he often wanted to sell stories to other TV stations, TV networks, but he wasn't quite sure what they needed. And then he also realized sometimes TV networks need video, they need footage from areas in the world where they have no correspondence. Most TV networks in the US have hardly correspondence anywhere, because they just cannot finance that anymore. But there are freelancers everywhere. So this platform brings them together. It also handles what freelancers hate, and that is the money side of the business. So the handling, actually writing invoices and then making sure that they are paid on time. And it also provides insurance, which is especially important, because most freelancers, if they are reporting from crisis areas, are not insured. And Story Hunter takes care of all that so that freelancers can actually concentrate on reporting. Another example, this is German, and I'm quite proud that the VOCA Media Innovation Lab, which I co-direct, we had a little seed funding for Hostwriter. This is a platform founded by 3 German female journalists who said, there's Airbnb and there are institutions and networks for journalists, but how if we combine this, that we bring freelancers together who then help each other? They can form little local networks. And in times where media institutions provide less and less expense monies, and freelancers actually have to finance for themselves their flights, their hotel stays, their local travel. What if we provide all this, and they can actually get together? They can, like a local Airbnb. And it's growing. It already has 500 members. It was only started less than 5 months ago. So another very good example of a startup. This is actually a non-profit startup that serves a useful purpose for something that wasn't there before. So these were some examples to inspire you, I hope. And I hope we have some time for questions. So I'm ready to answer them if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Langer. Please join me. If you can take your drink with you if you want to. We talked a lot about media startups, but is there a real threat from media startups for big media companies, or can't they be just bought off, like Facebook did with WhatsApp?
Well, if the price is right, many startups can be bought off. The owner of Snapchat still says no, still not enough. But I think that it's actually a bad strategy for media to wait to then pay a lot of money for startups. Most startups actually are very willing to cooperate with media in the very beginning, but that's when they're mostly ignored. This is slowly starting to change. Axel Springer has sort of a co-working incubator space to be close to these startups when they're just emerging and they're not so expensive yet.
All right, thank you, Ms. Langer. You heard her. The big media companies really have to look out for the new digital innovations. And in case you have questions later, you can meet her in the meet and greet room in 115, or you can Twitter it under the hashtag MFMW. Thank you for your attention.